nice. It's not complete, so we'll have one Sunday where have some sound and we have some things, but we don't have everything. So if it's awkward today, just it's one Sunday, and it should all be new by next Sunday. That being said, we'll be back in Romans chapter 13. And before we get started, Justin, we open us in a word of prayer, please.
Thank you for bringing us here safely today for a Sunday school lesson, and please help our minds be alert, attentive to thy word, as Brother Jeremy prepares the teacher from your word today, that please prepare his heart, Lord, just so you can have him say, and just help us with this lesson, Lord. We pray all these things in Christ Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Romans chapter 12, verse 21, be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. We've started a series. We've been here, I don't know, a month and a half. We'll probably be a couple more weeks. So we understand this idea that we live in an evil world, but it is possible to overcome the evil, not for the evil to stamp on us. Then we go back to verse 9. Verse 9, we start to get this picture of how, because Ms. Debbie, we started at the conclusion statement. Here's the conclusion. Let's figure out what's before that conclusion. How do you get to the conclusion that we don't have to be overcome of the evil? It starts out in verse 9. Verse 9, let love be without dissimulation. Let our love be genuine. Let it be real. Let it not be fake. Let us not put on the show. And then it gives us a picture of kind of what that looks like. Abhor that which is evil. Cleave to that which is good. Be kindly affectionate one to another with brotherly love, in honor, preferring one another. And there's that picture that we should be first to give the honor. Doug, we should become more and more like him who was first to love us. That makes us first to love others. Now, before we jump and go a little bit further, Justin, I can't get over the fact that this is first. Okay, especially if you consider the time this was written and what was going on and what was about to happen. I mean, Nero is already in power and he's about to lose his mind. And all of these things are about to come down, and they've already been through, 3 Caesars who are causing such huge issues. And here's where it starts. Justin, let your love be genuine to these people. And we come up with such a different list of how we need to keep it on the outside. Be genuinely loving is not usually our first answer. And I just want to bring, Eric, I don't know, did I give you Colossians 3? I did. I did such a good job. I make things so easy on you, Eric. Colossians 3:14. I think next Sunday night is next Sunday night first in October? Yeah, I don't look at the calendar yet. Things pop up for you now in the morning. You know what you have to do. So next Sunday night would be the first Sunday, Brother Moyer. That's Sunday night I have the opportunity to speak in the pulpit. We're going to go to this verse. And that's a whole list of put on and put off. And there's this great list of things you put off, like lying, and there's a great list of things you put off. And then there's a great list of things you put on. And here's the conclusionary statement. The conclusionary statement. Above all these things, all the things you put off, and all the things in front of this you put on charity, which is the bond of perfectness. Above all these things. So it's not really surprising. It shouldn't be surprising to me that the whole thing begins with let our love be genuine. It should be the motivation for everything that we do. But somehow I still, 52 years old, get that out of whack. And we need to remember that our motivation for everything we do should be like it was for him, that we might give love to others. Then it goes on from there. And verse 11, not slothful in business. We need to maintain our zeal. We need to stay on the boil. And we'll know this because we'll be fervent in spirit, serving the Lord. We'll not lose our zeal in loving. We'll not lose our zeal in serving. And then it goes on, and it talks about rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, constant, continuing instant in prayer. So as for our hope, it's supposed to be rejoicing. That's the stamp that it should be on there, Doug. As for our tribulation, we should be patient. We should be the one that's just plodding along. It's consistent. It's constant. It's just to be expected. Whatever comes in the life, we're still going to just keep taking the one step at a time. And then as it turns to prayer, we're supposed to be instant in prayer. We're supposed to be always in prayer. We have our motivation because he's our Father. We have our boldness, our availability because of the Son. And we have the ability because of the Spirit that lives in us. Now that brings us to 3 verses that are usually put together. And Matt, I'm going to try to put them together next week which means this week we're going to talk about just one of them. And that'll make it easier next week because I just have to reference it. But I'm going to tell you all three of these. Brother Bill, I think all three of these are tough. They're tough because they're not naturally in the flesh done. They're in the spirit, and they're tough because I don't always die to the flesh daily like I'm supposed to. But they are in this description. So Doug, I'm going to tell you, if we're not going to be overcome of evil, this needs to be a stamp of our life. If it's not, then there's a really good chance evil is what's stamping our life. The evil we've been through or the evil that's around. The only way for that, I mean, if there was another way, Ms. Trevia, if there was another way, I think God's a good God, and he would tell us. So since he's a good God, I'm presuming he's telling us the only way to not be stamped by the evil, and that requires these three things. So we're going to read them, and then we'll deal with just the first one. Verse 13, distributing to the necessity of the saints, given to hospitality, and that's where we're going to come back to. Bless them which persecute you, bless and curse not, which doesn't come easy. And rejoice with them that do rejoice, and weep with them that weep, which I'm going to tell you doesn't come easy. Justin, that doesn't come easy because that means we have to be involved in other people's lives, which should be natural for spirit-led people, but sometimes it's pretty hard, which is a key indication of how we're making our decisions in life. So, we're going to go back and take a look at this idea. Distributing to the necessity of the saints, given to hospitality. Hospitality is a great word. And it is something that's talked about a lot in large churches. Large churches. Because if it's not talked about in large churches, it's easy to just disappear in the woodwork and be involved in nothing and know no one, and you show up and you look good and you go home. So large churches are constantly talking about small groups, home groups. This is what we need. We have to make these things happen. But when you're not necessarily in one of those super large churches, then you don't talk about small groups. You don't talk about cliques or breaking because you don't have to. Everybody knows everybody, and everybody talks to everybody, and right. But it is extremely important. If you and I are not going to be overcome of evil, we need to be given to hospitality. It needs to be part of our life. It needs to be who we are. And I'll give you even more than that. One of the purposes for us coming together is that we might encourage each other. That's the purpose of hospitality one to another. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 24. You guys know what Hebrews 10:25 is. Hebrews 10:25, not forsaking the assembling yourselves together. Don't be as some is. Okay, we know Hebrews 25. But 10:24 gives us the purpose. And let us consider one another to provoke. Provoke is usually a bad word. Don't provoke your sister. Stop provoking your brother. No, but here it's good. It's a good word. It's a good term. It's talking about being the motivation. And let us consider one another to provoke, to motivate each other unto love and good works. Then it goes into not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, because this is what's supposed to happen. Okay? That's one of the reasons why we have to be given to hospitality, because we need to provoke each other. That's one of the dangers of the time we're in. The time we're in when we're getting so many reasons why we should not come together. And I'm not making fun of those things because we're living in real times. These are real things. Okay, to make fun of those things is not to tell the truth in love. You have to understand what really is. But you also have to understand what really is. What really is. God said we need this. He created a society, He created a way where we need to help each other. And when we isolate ourselves, we are weakened. And evil will win. So one of the reasons why this is so important is because this is what we're really supposed to do. One of the ways that we really express love in the body is through hospitality. Give me Hebrews chapter. You're just going over a couple chapters. You get the 13. Let brotherly love continue. That's 13:1. So back to the same topic. He goes through this picture, and then we get into the faith chapter, and then we get to chapter 12. Chapter 12. But then after he goes through this whole picture in chapter 12 of Hebrews, he starts out chapter 13. But let's bring it back to where we left off. Back here in chapter 10, We got this in the middle. This is how. There's some encouragement. There's some challenges. But then we get to 13 verse 1, and we need to maintain our love. We need to let our love be genuine. We need to let brotherly love continue. But then he goes into this. Be not forgetful to entertain strangers. That's the very picture of hospitality. Exactly what it is. Doug, we're not to forget to be hospitable. It's supposed to be part of who we are. Now, that's, be not forgetful to entertain strangers. That's a dangerous thing because it gets into this picture of entertaining. You start talking about hospitality or entertaining, and somebody starts popping up there, Martha Stewart Living, or Better Homes and Gardens, or Southern Living, and all these things start popping in your head, and that's the furthest thing from what biblical hospitality is. But because when you're going to Martha Stewart Living, the purpose is to be impressive. Okay, it's about me. And biblical hospitality is not about me. It's about loving other people. It's about that person. Biblical hospitality should grow in us as we grow in the gospel. But just as we grow in the gospel, we should grow in being like him. Do you know what he did? He invited all others to come unto him. Strangers like publicans and prostitutes and outcasts. That's who he invited to come unto him. And when we talk about hospitality, we're talking about inviting others to come into sharing that life. Hospitality for us is an expression of gospel life. It's an expression of us growing in those ways. Oh. Here, I tried to bring out a quote this morning. You can probably read it from back there. Next week. Talking about love. Here, let me do this. Good illustration. Matthew 25. Somewhere, I don't know, about 20, Matthew 25, 22, somewhere there is where he begins to talk about the sheep and the goats. And after he's done talking about the sheep and the goats, he gets to Matthew 25, 25, and in Matthew 25, 25, he starts talking about, but you loved me, you were hospitable to me, you cared for me. In fact, let me give you a picture of what that was like. When I was hungry, you fed me. And when I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. And when I was naked, you went and got the clothes as fast as you could. It doesn't say that, but really it should say that. And then they said, well, when did we do that? And Matthew 25:40. I did give you that. Matthew 25:40. Okay. And the king shall answer and say unto them, verily I say to you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these, my brethren, ye have done it unto me. Here's the picture. In a very real sense, then when you and I are hospitable and open up our homes to others, we're opening up our homes to Christ. Okay, this is the picture of gospel love. And just as we're supposed to grow in the gospel, grow to be like him, we start to understand, well, all of this comes from our love being genuine. Why this is so important that we be hospitable. So, a couple things I want to throw out about this, and then we'll get into a very practical picture. But let me do I like this quote. Actually, you have the quote, so I don't have to read this big old thing. It's 3 pages in mine. This is from a book called Hospitality Commandments. I don't think most Christians today understand how essential hospitality is to fanning the flames of love and strengthening the Christian family. Nancy, what he's talking about here is it's not so essential for the one we're being hospitable to. It's essential to you and me. Hospitality fleshes out love in a uniquely personal and sacrificial way.
Through the ministry of hospitality, we share our most prized possessions, and he's going to go on and list some of them. We share our family, our home, our finances, our food, our privacy, and our time. Indeed, we share our very lives. So hospitality is always costly. Through the ministry of hospitality, we provide friendship, acceptance, fellowship, refreshment, comfort, and love in one of the richest and deepest ways possible for humans to understand. It's 3 pages for you too. Unless we open the doors of our homes to one another, the reality of the local church as a close-knit family of loving brothers and sisters, this is only theory, it's only words. We're claiming something that we don't do. It is an extremely important commandment for us to be obedient. We are to be given in hospitality. Go back to Hebrews 13. Now, something important. Be not forgetful. It does not say entertain. It says be not forgetful. That's as if it's saying stop. And it's telling us to stop neglecting entertaining strangers. Stop neglecting not being hospitable. I didn't say that very well. There's probably lots of English reasons wrong with it. Mike's not in here. This is written to a group of Christians. And Doug, it makes me ask, why would they be neglected? Why would they be ignoring it? It could be that they're in times of persecution, and that makes it dangerous. I can use that as an excuse today too. It could be that it always costs. It could be that it takes a lot of effort. Lorraine, the truth could be that I'm becoming cold and a little apathetic, so I don't see the need. I just concentrate on my own issues. Or, which by the way, you'll know because you'll begin to become judgmental and justify and push away. But I'm going to tell you, this is just personal. This is thought. This is just my thought. I think it's not natural. It's just foreign. And one of the reasons, maybe the greatest reason, we neglect to be hospitable is because we don't realize how important it is. It's just not natural. I'll tell you. Angie was a missionary's daughter. Dave, when we got married, it was like this. She was like, oh, I think we should invite so-and-so over. We didn't have any invite him over. I didn't even know what she was talking about, so here's my response. Why? Because she grew up in a place where they shared their life in their home. Okay. That home had one of the greatest effects on changing my life. Not anything they said, not just being there. Okay, I don't remember. Well, I remember getting 2 lectures from them. Both of them were about marriage. I didn't pay attention to a single one. But Dave, I don't remember a single conversation that they just lived a different kind of life than I ever saw. And it was attractive to me. Being in that home, shared life. And that's just the home she grew up in. Well, the home I grew up in, here, my dad was in the military, so I moved every 2.5, 3 years, because they moved him a lot. Security clearance, and every time there was a job offer, a job that they needed to fill, and nobody locally had a clearance, it would cost so much to get a clearance, they would just transfer him, fill it, and then they would get somebody else cleared, and he ended up moving again and again and again. And somewhere around like 8 years old, I was like, Dad, we didn't really have, the father-son chats. This is one of the few I remember. Dad, I'm leaving all my friends. Oh, friends are no big deal, son. When we get to the new place, you just find who the big bad bully is, and you crack his head, and you'll have plenty of friends. Donnie, that's pretty much how I lived life as a kid. That was my dad's one big advice. That's not exactly hospitable. And pretty much every time we moved, within a month, he's getting a call from the school, or every once in a while the MPs would bring you home. But it was a different time back then. The MPs would bring you home. You need to find a way for him to get along with that person. I mean, they didn't put you in jail or anything. They just said, shake hands, be friends. And surprisingly, a lot of times that's what happens. My dad was unsaved, so if you just think he was terrible, okay, that's just the way he lived life. But even after he got saved, that's one of the things he never made an apology for. I know it's not the right way to live, but it was hard for me to ever win that argument because there is this truth.
You know what?
If you're held accountable for your words and actions, you're a little bit more careful about what you say and do. And we live in a time where there's no accountability for that. So, well, that's not true. Maybe that's the problem. There is an accountability for that. It's just not on my timetable. So hospitality was not exactly a natural thing for me. But then I heard this sermon about, I don't know, 20 years ago. And actually, Lorraine, you probably went to his class. He used to teach a class, and in this class he'd have about 2 weeks, and obviously it was at Pensacola, and it was about 2 weeks, and he would teach on 9 points, the 9 commandments of what was it, the 9 commandments of hospitality. And anyway, I heard him do it watched it on TV, and it just beat me up, because that's not who I was. I was, why? And I can tell you that as we began to open our home, sometimes, which wasn't very large at all, for like 4 years, Miss Pat, we lived in a construction trailer, however big that is. I can tell you how big it is. When you walk in the door, the bed takes up this part of the room. There's a little stove that's this big. There's a wall, a bathroom. You sit on the stall in the shower, so you can take a shower while you're sitting on. It's convenient for a guy. And then there was a little closet that's about this big that we kind of built, and that's the end of the trailer. That's where we lived for 4 years. So it was a tough place to entertain, but it had a yard. And Dave, as we began to open our eyes to hospitality, our ministry changed. And I gotta tell you, it's still not natural for me, but it is natural for my boys. They haven't seen anything else. I can't tell you how many times I've said, Eric, go see that person. They've come a couple of weeks. They don't know. Invite them over. And it has greatly changed the effect and the ability God has to use. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at, well, let me throw out a couple more things about, just 2 more things, and then we'll get into this quickly. One, go back to 12:13, Romans 12:13. Somewhere in there. I'm right here, I'll just read it. Distributing to the necessity of the saints, given to hospitality. Doug, that is a present participle. That means it's continual action. We don't just get to do this once and be done with it. I wish I could just check it off sometimes, but you can't. It's a continuing action. It's supposed to be who we are. It's how we live. And then one more. Peter, 1 Peter 4:9. Did I give you 1 Peter 4:9? I did. Use hospitality. Great word right there. Treva, look at that first word. It sounds like a bad word. It says, Treva, you should use it. It's a tool. It has a purpose. We are to use hospitality, and it's not supposed to be this grudging, It's supposed to be joyous. Dave, after all, it's motivated out of our real, genuine love. Why should it be, It's not hard for you to love Michelle, is it? You understand the point? It's not supposed to be this overwhelming burden that we hide and run from. It's supposed to be part of our life. Consistently, always part of our life. Now, with that, very practical, and I got 15 minutes to go through the 10 commandments of, I can do it, the 10 commandments of biblical hospitality. Here's number 1. Very simple. Thou shalt acknowledge your home as a gift and use it for Christ. All right, really? It's one of those, they're not in here, so I can say this. Probably at some point, preacher, in the next couple weeks, Jessica and Brandon will come up and want to dedicate their baby. And you're going to say, you understand that when you dedicate this baby, what you're really doing is dedicating yourself to live this life, to raise this child for God's will. Something like that. It'll sound better when he says it, but that's what he's going to say. Well, this is what I'm saying. Justin, you have a car? God gave you that car. You have a job? God gave you that car. God gave you that job. That job gives you a check. God gave you that check. God gave you money. He gave you a car. He gave you... Do you live somewhere? He gave you a place to live. You know what all those things are for? His glory. You know, and as we learn to use them for His glory, not to consume upon our own lust, it increases our ability to serve. It increases our effectiveness for others. Basically, Doug, it makes us better lovers. He has given us that we might, what was that tool? It was a tool that we might use. When we're not using it, we're consuming it. We're living lustful, not loving. 2, thou shalt open your home to strangers. Oh, hospitality, Brother Jeremy, I got this thing down. All my relatives and all my friends come over. There's never peace in my house. Well, hospitality is actually a 2-part word. I just forgot the second part. The first part is phileo, meaning love. The second part means strangers. The word literally means love strangers. Now what happens? What hopefully happens, Brother Bill, if you have them over to the house a couple times, they're not strangers anymore. Now they become friends, which means this ever going on cycle. I get that cycle. Sometimes I complain about that cycle. And then I feel so unloving. You know what happens? If I complain about that cycle, you know, to you, well, you'll probably correct me. So I got to find somebody else. Then I'll complain about that cycle to you. You'd probably correct me too. Well, I wouldn't listen. So I complain about that cycle to you. You know, I can just go on and on and on. But preacher, if I complain about that cycle in prayer, I feel pretty ashamed for all that He's given me and all the opportunity, and then I just want to consume it upon my own lust. Thou shalt open your home to strangers, not just family and friends. 3, thou shalt not feel pressure. Oh, this is really important. Thou shalt not feel pressure to have the perfect home or meal, or it's not to impress. Now, I'm going to tell you this is really important. Miss Cindy, this is important because this is what happens. If you feel like you have to have the perfect home and you have to have the perfect meal and you will not be hospitable. You're not going to have people over. It's not going to happen. When is their time? Here you go. I got it. But John's going to come home and say, I'm having people over. So, with all the other things you have to do and all the other responsibilities, I now want you to do the white glove treatment to the kitchen and the bathroom. I want you to clean the rest of the house. I want a 7-course meal. Oh, and I'll go mow the lawn. I don't even want to be in that house if he makes those comments. When we get to the place that it has to be perfect, it is our excuse why we don't. Bill, you know it's okay. Here, Papa John's and Popeyes are okay for dinner. They are. Closing off the rest of the house so you only use one bathroom, the living room, and whatever else you can see from there is fine. It is not about trying to impress or be the one or accomplish anything else. It's about loving that individual. And let me tell you, they probably just want to be there. Okay, that's you can only share life with them if it's real life. When you tie it up to perfection, it just doesn't happen. Here, I wrote this down. We are to derive our identity from how we love, not from how our house looks. Now, let me tell you, that doesn't mean that, you give no care and concern to that which He's given you. We're supposed to be good caretakers. But it's not the most important thing. I can't find a verse that said, I sent my Son to die for your house. To die for people. For thou shalt not expect anything in return. I've learned this. If you expect nothing, most of the time, you will get exactly what you expected. And you're not disappointed. But if we expect something, it's going to be, we had them over and they didn't even send us a card. Well, that won't happen. That happens all the time. Let me just tell you, when somebody complains like that to you, just say, well, did you pray about it? Because it'll change our view. Doug, we had you over, which we've never done, by the way. It says strangers, trust me. And you didn't have us over, which you've never done, by the way. If that happens, we just won't do it. We'll hold on to the disappointment, and we won't be hospitable, which, by the way, was a command. It is a way in which we are fulfilling our love. 5, thou shalt have, I gotta go fast, thou shalt have no ulterior motive. Well, my wife says Mary Kay. Why don't you come over? I'm in the insurance business. Come over for dinner. Well, Popeyes. Or here's worse, and probably more likely happens all the time. You ready? Well, Nate, I'm not so happy with some of the things the preacher's saying. You know him pretty well. So why don't you come over and we'll see if you agree with me. Because I got to build allies. It's craziness. Here's the motive to be hospitable. I see an opportunity to be encouraging. I see an opportunity to share the love of Jesus. I see an opportunity to share the Word of God. I see an opportunity to share the gospel. Those are good reasons. Anything outside of those, it's not hospitality. It's pure evil. It's totally selfish. Let me throw this out too. Well, I don't know how many it is. I've learned. It takes me, I'm hard-headed. I don't learn very fast. You know how that is. You can agree with that. But I've learned that I'm in Ben's generation. That makes me about 10 years younger. I'm good with that. I don't know whatever that show was you were talking about. Our generation, we tend to not want to talk about things. Just want to kind of solve it. And I know anytime you put things in a big group, there's always the exceptions. But in general, you got to make us talk. I'm going to tell you, that's not true of the generation underneath us. They want to talk. I cannot tell you, well, I could tell you some of the things that have popped out at my table when you begin to ask questions. Boom. Well, how are you doing in your life? What are you struggling with? Sometimes I got to take my phone, excuse myself to go to the water closet, and look it up. What is FWB? Well, I'll give you this big old long list. One of them is friends with benefits. I have people sitting at my table saying, well, this is where I'm struggling with life. I have Christians sitting at my table. This is shocking to me, Matt. And they will say, well, I'm struggling with same-sex attraction. Let me tell you, people will talk. You build a scenario where they feel like they can come and they can actually get help. They want to argue. They want approval, or they want to be shown a different way. They will talk. Rather ask. They'll tell you. You know how this is. You don't even have to ask in your class. They're telling you. That's the purpose. That's the purpose, to be hospitable. Let me tell you, these conversations are going to be had. I would like them to be had on my table so I can give them another option that's not the option they're going to hear from out there. I've had that's where it's supposed to happen. That's where we can talk. That's where, Matt, that's where you can build a loving relationship, and they can feel open enough and cared for enough. They don't care what you know. They don't even believe what you know until they know that you care for them. And somehow, now it matters a whole lot more. And if you build that relationship, there will always be somebody at your door or on your phone. And we're supposed to. That's supposed to be our life. Thou shalt take the initiative, not wait to be asked. It doesn't just happen. It has to have a beginning. At some point, you got to make a move. Oh, Jeremy, that made sense to me. I'm going to go home. Okay, just make sure your prayer goes this way. God, you want me to do what you told me to do. Don't try to fool yourself. Kid, Mom, you really wanted me to clean my room? You've only been telling me 15 times. Yeah, that's why I told you. 7, thou shalt talk about spiritual truth at some point. I'll give you another picture. Doug, I can't tell you how many times I've been invited to something. A birthday party, a cookout, a holiday, a dinner after church. And before it's over, a parent will say, oh, but Jeremy, before you're done, can you talk to Sally about this? I got to tell you, first, if you're going to do that, give a brother a heads up. That would be nice. Second, I think it's very cool that you care enough and you believe the Bible has the answer enough that you want to do that. And you understand that in these relationships, babe, that's what we're supposed to do. And sometimes it's a third outside party that can help. But, you know, that you want to hear and that you want to learn, and I think that's good. I also got to tell you, Heather, sometimes that's really convicting for me because you had to ask, I didn't notice first. So I was probably one of my boo-hoo, always somebody there times. So I was so concentrated on how tough it is that I missed a great opportunity and somebody who's really hurting. But I've also learned this. Those conversations are usually much easier had at my home or when I'm with a child, or because they'll probably be a lot more open when they feel like they're by me not getting hammered on by somebody their parents brought to the table. It's one of those things that happens in hospitable situations because it just tears things down. It weights it down. So I'm either the heavy, who they've learned to ignore, or I'm somebody who cares about them that they think has a little bit of knowledge. You know which one they listen to. You know which one they'll talk to. And you know, we're supposed to be that for each other. Nobody raises a child alone. The environment you put them in is going to have a great effect, sometimes greater than the effect you will, especially if you're not living real life at home. If you're just putting on the act. They're going to learn how it's an act. You can't wait to get away from it and then put on one so no one will be able to help them down the road. Because they'll look good on the outside too and be rotten inside. All right, got a couple. Got to finish. Got 2 minutes. 8. Thou shalt be on the lookout for people you can encourage. Well, I see you've come for a couple of weeks and you're always sitting off by yourself. So, Angie, let's go sit on the other side of the church. Well, we always sit here. Yeah, we've actually moved around over time, but let's go sit over there. And then let's talk to him. And then let's maybe start by inviting him out. We'll go to, I almost said Shoney's. That would have dated myself. We'll go to Bob Evans. Cracker Barrel's always too. Look for somebody that's isolated and bring them in. Thou shalt not quit after a bad experience. Are you going to have a bad experience? Of course. We've had people over for 2.5 hours, and I've literally counted and said, Angie, do you know that person was here for 2.5 hours and said 17 words? That's a bit awkward. Treva, I know you think I like to talk, but at home, it's more like home, and I don't like to talk. I would much rather just throw out a few questions and you just take off. It can be rough, or they can hate the food. Well, I don't eat chicken. Pizza's bad for my digestion. They can criticize everything. You can have some very rough experiences. But we're not supposed to quit. We're to be the loving people. Number 10. Thou shalt be
A grateful guest, no
matter what. Sometimes you're not the one being hospitable. Somebody else is. And I'm going to tell you, I struggle with this. Brother Moore, I really do struggle with this. At 52, I still struggle with this. And this is what I struggle with, making it happen. When people invite you, this path, there is always somebody at the door, and there is always something to do, and sometimes it is just hard for me to say yes. But we need to find a way to make it happen. We need to find a way to be encouraging afterwards. You know, and my boys have grown up where people have always come to their house. They really stink at this. Hank, I love watching the two young ladies. I love watching Katie, especially Jade. Jade is, oh, we're going over there? Did you get flowers? What? Did you get flowers? We're going to somebody's house. You always bring flowers. They love flowers. Did you get flowers? We're stopping and getting flowers on the way. We'll be late. I don't care. We're not showing up without flowers. Did you have a good time? Oh, no, it was terrible. But we're writing them thank you note. We're encouraging them. She is so good at it. And she means it. And it's so much fun to watch because it's not me. And Katie is too. But we need to be hospitable when we're on the other side. We need to encourage people in their hospitality. We're done. In fact, we're overdone. We're overdone. That means I need a short prayer. Can't be Brother Allen. Brother Allen, I truly meant what I said last week. There are some people that I would go to pray for me, and without a doubt, you are one of them. Every time I've heard you, I think you're talking to the throne of grace, and I so appreciate listening to you pray. But Brother Hank, close in word prayer.